Yeah. So now in the afternoon, I have the pleasure to speak about visualization, integrating visuals and infographics. And maybe I start with a small background story, because some people would say, Christine is doing so many things, but what is she actually doing? So she's, and maybe just to tell you, I mean, I am maybe not the perfect academic person. I have worked almost 20 years now in different fields. I was 10 years in Brussels. I worked with policy makers. I worked with industry. I worked with NGOs. My passion is in social affairs and health and well-being, health literacy in particular. So also to see what is behind the scenes. Why do people get sick? Why do others never get sick? What are the mental health issues in between? These kind of things. My parents would have loved it if I would have become a doctor, but I changed my mind. So I was always interested in languages, in communication, in cross-cultural things. And if you move to the next slide, also in creative visualization, because I mean, we are all learners, but actually the majority of us are visual learners. So maybe you remember in schools, you are highlighting, oh, now it's working, so. You are highlighting things, you are color coding, you have different post-its, you are remembering it by seeing it, so these kind of things. Visualization refers to the technique of creating visual representations of information, data, or concepts to enhance understanding and communication. So basically just showing the information in a different way. And if you move to the next slides, maybe you have heard of it already, a picture paints 1,000 words. Just to see, I mean, you have a whole page of text and then you have a picture, which just explains it. So that's another thing. And if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah. As I said, it's just another way of presenting information. So the, yeah, a single image can convey a complex idea or maybe just explain a whole story. And if you move to the next slide, please. And continue to click. You can also see with these images, some of you might recognize this because they have already been there. And one more picture, please. One more click. But this was almost 20 years ago. It was my first job in Brussels, close to the European Commission, close to the European Union. So this is the capital of Belgium. I felt very important at that time. I was 24 years, but I thought, well, I'm working with the EU for the German governments, with these policymakers. Just walking through that street was already so important, and you could see. But there were also problems, challenges, difficulties. I mean, there's a lot of poverty in Brussels as well. Many different cultures living together. So in my free time, I was working as a volunteer as well, because as I said, social activities are interesting, but just from these pictures. So if you could go back one slide. Just seeing there, you could see, oh, it's interesting. It's such a fascinating place. But I mean, as I said, there is also another side of Brussels. So high criminality, high poverty rates. And this is why I wanted to work there, to make, like Joy said, make a difference, make your voices heard. You are doing this for certain people. So yeah, if you click to the next slide, please. There are, as I said, it's not supposed to be readable or visible or something, but you can display information in so many different ways. And Irene will also show you how to do this in a very efficient way. So if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, infographics, icons, different kinds of shapes or graphs, whatever you want to use, but just to display information in a nicer way, in a more appealing way, because just looking at text, people just go away. They say, I have no time to read this. And this is the problem of our age. I mean, nobody has time to read 30 pages. They just want to see a picture and understand, ah, yeah, this is the conference. So like all these banners that we have here, just to understand quickly what it is. And yeah, appealing. So it should be interesting. So going to the next slide, please. You should educate. You should try to explain what you want to say, but also in a simple way. So not too complicated. You want to promote something. I mean, marketing campaigns. I worked in public affairs and marketing and communication for so many years. And usually it's just explaining the situation. They said, do something good and speak about it, like all these corporate social responsibility reports, just explaining what you did, raising awareness and sharing insights on social and environmental issues, for example. This is what they do, because otherwise it's just, yeah, another document that's ending on the shelf. So the next slide, please. And the effectiveness of infographics, I mean, as I said, it can simplify information. So just putting one document, big data into one graphic, for example. And as I said, we don't have much time. So most of us enjoy these pictures, because if we see a publication 10 pages long, you see the graphics, you see, this is interesting. But yeah, so this is why we are using infographics, synthesizing data. And yeah, this is what we enjoy. And I think when Irene is speaking, you will also understand a bit better why it's so important to do this in a good way. So on the next slide, please. Yeah, as I said, we can use icons, we can use different techniques. And the main point, the baseline information is the data that you have. And sometimes you see, for example, in surveillance, you have the countries, you have the number of adolescents, you have the age, you have the gender, etc. But how to make this appealing? Because you have so many different ways to put this in an Excel sheet or in a table or something. Color is one thing, visual elements, but Irene will also explain more about the storyline. So what's the story behind? What are we trying to say? The 7 countries, the 14,000 adolescents in DASH. So just to say, what is the structure? And then also checking the message that we try to convey. So on the next slide, please. Like Joy said, who are we doing this for? I mean, the adolescents, of course, it's our target audience, but the briefs, we want to target the information for a certain political audience or target group as well. So it depends on the message. Sometimes when you have these European politicians walking around in Brussels, sometimes you just have 2 minutes. You see them on the street, you see them in the elevator pitches. But yeah, just to have your message clear, just know what you're saying to which person. And then, for example, when we remember for which person we are doing this, like, for example, the comic book, you also need to use another language again, just to make it understandable, for example, for adolescents. So always trying to bring these different perspectives together in different fields. So next slide, please. And yeah, just to say, it should be efficient, it should be effective, because otherwise you can make a policy brief for a person that doesn't really understand it, or you don't really understand why you are doing this. And of course, it should be used more efficiently. You want to do this for a certain campaign affairs or what a public affairs strategy. So avoiding wasted effort on irrelevant audiences. So you are not just doing this for the whole government of a certain country. You are doing this for this ministry, because this ministry is working on this policy and trying to implement it in the next few days or weeks or so. So next slide, please. And yeah, you will also see that you need to think about your target audience. I mean, demography is one thing, the needs that we have identified now in our group discussions, choosing the right channels. I mean, how are you communicating with these different ministries? Is it just a document, or is it a physical meeting? Is it a campaign? Is it during a conference? Empathy. That's what I learned in Brussels as well. Sometimes you meet them in the bathroom. Sometimes you can talk to them on the elevator. So sometimes it's just human beings. So just to know how to convey your message, understanding their perspective. And then also continuously evaluate the effectiveness of your communication and make adjustments. So maybe you see, it's such a beautiful poster, it's such a beautiful policy brief, but it's not actually conveying the message. So just to remember, there's always a way sometimes to make it more focused on a certain thing. And next slide, please. Yeah, so some things I have already said, but also, I mean, the values, the interests, location. We also discussed in every country it's different, or it could be different. In some countries there might be similarities. Maybe there is one issue that is more common, for example, that young people are now enjoying technology more than going outside, these kind of things. But we need to consider, I mean, what are the different indicators and categories of our target audience? And on the one hand, these are the adolescents, but on the other hand, also the target audience for these policy briefs. So yeah, also understanding how they think might be important. Next one, please. And yeah, reaching the right people is important. So sometimes you have these wonderful tasks just to look at the, how do you call it, organigram of an institution, just to find out this one is responsible for this topic. So also, yeah, trying to find out who that person is and then to target it just to that one, because this one is working on that policy document, and then also to tailor your message. Next slide, please. And now we come to one topic that Irene will also explain in a nicer way, because there are so many different ways to display information. And for example, when we talk about surveillance, there are different graphs, different things. So not always to use the suggested thing, the default graph or something, also to think outside the box. How do I want to display the different age groups? How do I want to display the different categories, for example? And on the next slide, I just put these there. I mean, it's not supposed to transfer any messages, but just to see there are so many different graphs that you could use, but you should think first, yeah, about the story, the background that you want to have, because it looks always nice, but it should also be useful for what you are doing. So on the next few slides, I've just, so if you move on, this is something that that AAPH created for last year's conference. They did policy briefs, and if you continue to move, unfortunately, it's not visible, but I mean, you will see it afterwards in the slides. But this one is supposed to, I mean, you could see immediately that there are, yeah, the different information is displayed in a nicer format than in the previous slide, for example. And if you continue to move, so here you just see the icons, the percentages, etc., but lots of text. But on the next one, unfortunately, also not working as planned, but as I said, these graphs make a difference. So on the next slide, you could also see, I mean, yeah, households with reported difficulty accessing maternal and reproductive health care. So just to see the different countries, the different problems. And yeah, as I said, unfortunately, not everything is visible. But here, the yellow one was family planning, the other one, etc. So I rushed through it because we are a bit behind, but I think we caught up on time. So if there are still any questions, I'm pleased to answer them. But otherwise, thank you very much for your attention. And next slide. And otherwise, we will share. So if you could move on. Yeah. So these are my contact details, just in case for those who don't know yet. The one behind the 10,000 emails. And yeah, otherwise, I'm handing over to my valuable colleague, Irene, who will explain you how to use visualization in an effective way as well. Thank you.